Right, today we're going to be talking quite simply about how muscles grow. How do we make our muscles grow? Before we can talk training, dieting, nutrition, recovery, any of that fancy stuff, let's just get down to the basics of how muscles actually grow. So, there's three main drivers that are the stimulus for us to then recover from and adapt from to cause growth. The first one is mechanical tension. So what this means is when our muscles are braced, tensed, working against gravity or against resistance, that is where we get mechanical tension from. The more weight we lift, the closer to failure we get, the more mechanical tension those muscles will exert. And as we work our way through the sets, we'll go from higher velocity, faster movements, and then as our body adapts to continue creating more and more tension, those reps will eventually slow down. That's the natural process of how those lifts will start off nice and fast on a bench press, and the last few reps will be a bit of a grinder. That is our body's natural way to keep mechanical tension high, to keep producing as much force as we can. So the closer we go to failure, the more mechanical tension we'll be creating. So if the last rep of your set is as fast as the first, you haven't reached failure. You need to up the weight. You shouldn't be manually lowering the tempo. It should be the auto response of your body to keep that tension high and continue to drive force. The second one is metabolic stress. So from training, we produce lots of metabolites like lactate, like cortisol, like all that blood that goes around our body. These inflammatory responses to training is what then our body will homeostasis respond to signal that we need to then recover, adapt, and come back stronger. So lots of people might think, oh, I'm sore, I'm inflamed, I've got a pump, I've got all of these sorts of things. Maybe if I lower those, that'll improve my recovery. It's almost the exact opposite. You don't want to play around with the metabolic stress and take anti-inflammatory medications and those sorts of things when you're sore after a workout, because that will only blunt your body's ability to respond and recover. So we need metabolic stress, we need mechanical tension, but these aren't just things that we have to completely go to the maximum. So we're not just like trying to get a pump, trying to get lactate, trying to get cortisol. Those things come when we do everything properly. They're a byproduct of training that then causes growth. They're not something we chase in and of itself. And then in regards to the pump or cell swelling, this comes up a lot, whether the pump actually causes hypertrophy and whether it is actually a stimulus for growth, the pump on its own, or whether it's just like something that's a coincidence that whenever we get a pump, we'll get growth, but the pump isn't causing the growth. Now, where I stand on that, I'd say it's just a good metric, whether you are training those muscles and getting mechanical tension in the area you're trying to work. If you do your chest, you get a pump in your chest, that's probably a good exercise, a good workout for your chest. Quite simple, but I don't think chasing the pump is the way forward. The cell swelling on its own might contribute to some sarcoplasmic hypertrophy, but myofibral hypertrophy and that increase in strength certainly isn't going to come from our pump work. And then the third and most controversial we have is muscle damage. So when we say muscle damage, we are not talking about taking a hammer and hitting our chest and it coming back growing and all of a sudden we're Arnold, or taking a lighter and burning ourselves, or doing any kind of like electric work where we hurt our muscles. That's not what we mean by muscle damage. And what we mean by muscle damage in this case is those microfibers, those micro tears at that small level that our body then responds to patch up, to then adapt, recover from, adapt, become stronger. So we have this constant wave of what is called SRA. It is a little magic thing: stimulus, recovery, adaptation. So let's gonna talk about that SRA: stimulus, recovery, adaptation. How does this work? So we're going to train ourselves a muscle, and we are going to, let's say our output is halfway through this graph. We're going to train our muscle, and now when we're sore, the output that we can perform on that muscle after that training session goes down. And over time, we recover, and our output for that muscle when we go to train our next session is higher because we've recovered. And then after that session, it will go down. And when we're ready to train, these 2 points from the start of the first session to the start of the second session, we can see Our output would be possibly higher here if we train right there and then, but if we waited too long, our potential output and our adaptation would have gone too long and we'd have missed those windows. And if we'd have trained too soon, our recovery wouldn't have been in there in time and we wouldn't have been able to produce more output. So we need to be training just when we have a super compensation and we have adapted to be able to produce more output, to generate more stimulus, to then continue doing this indefinitely. So what's important to do is to train right when we need to. If we were to train here, our output would only go down. For next session, we wouldn't have recovered enough. We wouldn't be able to generate any more stimulus. We would be able to recover, but our adaptation would be no higher than our baseline. And if we trained too late, when this line goes and declines, we'd be missing out on any progress. We'd have skipped that recovery and that super compensation from that adaptation would have passed. So we need to train when we're fully recovered and we don't need to recover for too long. So think about maybe training a leg day on a Monday. Next Monday you train it, you are stronger. But if you train leg day on the Monday, a week later you don't train legs, a week after that you don't train legs, a week after that you don't train legs, and you're training legs the first Monday of every month, you're not going to see any super adaptation and increase that you can create in your stimulus, so you're not going to make any progress. So to break that down, put it in a simple example, we have here a man, let us name him Bob. So Bob has trained his biceps. Today is bicep day, and he has created mechanical tension on these biceps. He has created metabolic stress. He's got a nice feeling of blood in his arms. All is good. And these little cells, muscles, they have micro tears in them now. And we're nice and we're trained, and he's done a good job training his arms. So what is Paul going to do? Paul is now going to eat some food. He's going to look at recovering after his workout. He's going to get protein in. He's going to eat throughout the next few days. And sure enough, that damage will fade away. Those muscle tears will fill themselves back in with that protein he's eating, providing that he's not in a massive calorie deficit. Those tears will go away. His biceps will now be just a little bit stronger and a little bit bigger. And next time he goes to the gym, he'll be able to train with a little bit more weight. His output will be a little bit higher. So therefore, the amount of food that Bob can eat will be a little bit higher. We're talking a tiny amount every session. We're putting on tiny amounts of weight. We're putting on a rep. We're putting on a few calories. You know, over the course of a year, your basal metabolic rate, if your body weight goes up by a few kilos, might only go up by a few hundred calories. But if we don't increase our calories, that means our output is going up. Our input is staying the same, which means eventually our body fat is going to go down. So not only are Paul's arms going to get bigger, he's going to get a little bit leaner. Paul's going to get himself a nice set of abs eventually. He's going to get bigger arms and he's going to get abs if he continues to progressively overload and maintains the same amount of calories. If he decides he wants to speed up the process, that his arms are growing and that he's growing, he's going to eat a little bit more than maintenance, bigger mouth, bigger meals. He's going to get slightly more muscle than if he was on maintenance. He's also going to, unfortunately, not get any leaner, and he's possibly, because he's in a surplus, going to get a little bit rounder. But luckily, there's a thing we can do where we have a little check in the mirror, and if we don't like what we see in this midsection, we can always stop progressing those lifts. We can try and stay as strong as we are, and we can look at going into a cut those away, try our best to hold on to those biceps that we've built, those lifts that we've built, reveal those abs, and then go back to growing in a sort of peak and trough pattern where we have higher highs in strength and body weight, higher lows in strength and body weight, but we also have a constantly growing over time leaner composition. At the end of one gaining phase, we'll be leaner than at the end of the last one. At the end of one cutting phase, we'll be leaner at the end of the other. So we are gradually shifting those scales. Our body fat is over time decreasing, and our muscle mass is over time increasing, which means our composition of body fat to fat-free mass, muscle to fat ratio is changing in our favor slowly as we go through these bulking and cutting cycles, or we can take the even slow approach and stay on the same maintenance calories and just look at progressively overloading and trying to hold that composition. But in any case, Bob is going to be training, which Bob likes to do. Bob is going to be lifting weights, and Bob is going to be eating food. So Bob is going to be very happy, and there shouldn't be any point where he feels like he's eating too much food and it's unhealthy and he becomes over fat. And there shouldn't be any point where he feels like he's eating too little food, he becomes weak, flat and skinny, because neither of those are the best approach. The long-term approach is to just go until you feel like you're growing is stopping, and to just cut until you feel like your lifts are dropping. So to summarize the question of how muscles grow, we can continue to learn from there. We need to train, we need to create a stimulus, we then need to eat, we need to sleep, we need to recover in order to have a progressive overload in our program. We will then adapt, we will have recovered, we will be stronger, we'll be ready to go again, we'll be ready to train again with more weights, more reps, more intensity, more of something, and we will put more weight on the bar. Those muscles will respond, they will recover, they will adapt to take on that stimulus, and next time be ready to take on more and more and more. So we lift 10 kilos, we go home, we eat some food, we sleep, we wait a few days, we adapt, we're ready to go again, we lift 10.5 kilos. And so the merry-go-round grows, the muscles get damaged, the protein we synthesize goes into those muscles, fills up the void, the hole that we've dug, and a little bit extra on top. And then we keep on going and we keep on growing.